Hey, it's Chris Herbert, and welcome to my Monday morning podcast for Monday, May the 12th, 2025. If you hear those chimes in the background, I'm out on my porch here in farmland, Ontario. This is where we are situated in rural Ontario. Um, some nice background. No wind today, so I thought I'd come out here and do my podcast on the patio here in the porch. So, great weekend. I was down in the Toronto area playing in the Canadian Squash Championships in the 60 plus division. Um, and for some of you who maybe don't know, squash has been an integral part of my life since I was 12 years old. My dad introduced me to the game, and it is something that has stuck with me till now, and I intend to continue to play squash forever, as long as I'm able to stay in this beautiful country and land. Fantastic event. It was held at the Toronto Cricket Club. Kudos to the Squash Canada team who put together a phenomenal event, and thank you so much to all the sponsors that contributed. And what's great about squash is it it really brings people together of varying ages, of varying levels, but also brings the top players in the world together in some instances. And in this case, for the squash championships, there were like top 100-ish ranked players playing in the PSA event, Professional Squash Association event. And there's a show court. It's a court basically that allows you to watch squash from any wall, right? Because it's all glass. So the players play in this sort of like fishbowl, basically. And it's also been designed such that you use a white ball, and that white ball is very easy to see on television or YouTube. So you've got all of these matches taking place, from Thursday through to Sunday, from various age groups, various levels, beginner through advanced. And I don't know, like whether it's, I don't know whether this transfers over to pickleball and maybe to tennis and now paddle or padel, depending on how you like to pronounce that sport. Um, Athletics like this, and squash in particular, it's like every time you go to a tournament, it's like what is it when a reunion? Because if you sort of play in numerous tournaments throughout the year, because there's like I think I'm slated to play in 7 next season roughly. You bump into people who you've known for years, and it's like you're just happy to see these, you know, casual friends, right? The other thing that's really cool is, it's a competitive situation, so people take, you know, take participating in it seriously. Some maybe too seriously, and then some others, don't care as much. But still, it's a competitive environment. There's a lot of cooperation that needs to take place. It's an example of good sportsmanship, maybe bad sportsmanship on some occasions. There's socializing. It's just all the really good things about humanity, in bringing people together who have a common interest, who love something. And I remember, so I lost my first round, the 60 plus. It was a disappointing result, but I was fine with that. So I went into the consolation, and I ended up winning the consolation. So I played 2 other matches to get to the finals, and I felt really good about my game. And I ended up playing a really great guy and a good player in the finals. And it was a tough haul. It really was a tough haul, and The unfortunate thing is he had to default because he injured himself on court. So I hope, Danny, everything is fine, and I hope to see you and we can play against each other at some point in time. And I wish you all the best, my friend. I'd never met him before, but clearly this guy, had squash mojo. I mean, he could hit the ball with really well. He could move reasonably well, and both him and I are, not in the best of shape. I'm planning on addressing that for next season. Um, we were playing, and the rallies were good. There was we were pushing each other, and I hit a pretty decent drop shot. I think either in the second, I think it was the second game, but I don't remember whether it was the first or second. And something popped in his knee, which was a shame. And he tried two more rallies. He probably played a bit more, and he had to concede the match. So it's not a way anybody would want to win a match, unfortunately. So again, I hope he gets better, and hope he can play again. He had pulled an Achilles prior to, so he was very conscious about not pushing himself. So I get it, 100%. So great experience. The one thing that this is applicable to me too, because I've injured myself on the squash court, and this is really important for recreational players. Like if you're playing ultimate frisbee, you know, um, and specifically you're playing pickleball these days, which is top growing racket sport, maybe sport right now everywhere. Um, you need to be conditioned well enough so you don't get injured. Um, that's the biggest problem, especially as we get older. You know, you can't play to be fit in and of itself. You've got to play to stay fit and get fitter, but you need a regime, to make sure that you're building a good muscular foundation. You're nimble enough on court, so you got to train. Really, you got to train. Not easy to do, but if you want to keep playing squash or whatever sport, whether it's hockey or pickleball or squash, you got to train for it. Um, and that's it's kind of an interesting thing because, I think athletics, of varying levels is competitive. Like you could go into a beginners or a D tournament, squash tournament, and just have the great time. Have some fun and test your competitive chops and see what it's like being under pressure, those sort of things. And these are transferable to entrepreneurship, right? It's how do you deal with anxiety? Because some people I even get butterflies still when I'm getting ready for a tournament match, and I've been playing squash since I was 12. Anyway, so fantastic sport, fantastic tournament. The other thing that I think is really important, whether you're an entrepreneur or just in general, is your friends, right? So one of the things that I'm focused on now is to reconnect with 5 really close friends who, for whatever reason, distances has, whether it's physical distance or it's only physical distance actually, it's just spend more time with the people that you love, right? And I would say that pretty much anybody that listens to this podcast probably has 2 or 3 friends that they could think of off the top of their head who they haven't talked to in years, who and it hasn't been really easy to reconnect because life is getting taking us in different directions, family, business, work, whatever. So I'm kind of thinking differently about it. I'm thinking, okay, so what friends do I have in squash, that um, I can, and what are they doing now, in terms of their lives outside of squash? And is there any way in which I can play squash with them and also be involved in other aspects of their lives so that there are multiple reasons for us to be together every month or two? So a really good friend of mine, Dave, he was in the Masters. He was in the 70 plus. He played really, really well. I was in the 60 plus. So we basically went down and we spent some time in Toronto. And I contacted another squash buddy of mine, Eric, and I said, hey, can we shack up at your place? He said, of course, right? Because he's a great guy. So these are two of my closest friends who I love dearly, who have a common interest, which is squash. But we're also entrepreneurs. So you kind of finding all these ingredients that make the relationship important, right? But it can't be one-off stuff anymore. I find, not for me, anyways. I'm always looking for multiple reasons to be with people, so that it can become a really enriching experience. So this event was awesome. I spent lots of time with Dave. We talked about business. We talked about our marriages. We talked about squash, and I'm not going to TMI any information here, but it was just a wonderful trip, you know. And I'm going to do more of those. And I would encourage everybody else to think, how can I engineer getting friends that I care about back into my life, and sort of extricate yourself from your day to day and plop yourself into a world where where you're doing something with a couple friends, and then think, well, what could we do next? So what Dave and I are doing is we're gonna plan. We're going on a squash tour for next year. So we're gonna sort of figure out how we can play some squash together, maybe do some traveling with our wives to squash tournaments in the East Coast, that sort of stuff. Tie it to businesses, tie it to Area 81, for example, my accelerator, that sort of thing. So, it's just a different way to think now for me. And I'm sure people do this all the time, and perhaps for many people it's just common sense, but it's just a maybe micro pivot, it's in terms of who I want to spend time with, why, and all the things that we sort of put together in order for us to really enjoy each other's time, as opposed to a 2-hour visit, or a 2-hour coffee, or get together and just catch up, right? So go deep. What else can I talk about? I think that's good. Yeah, I don't really know what else to talk about. I mean, we've got some stuff going with Area 81 at the end of May. We're calling it May Day. And it's going to be interesting. We're bringing about 15 entrepreneurs together, from 1 to 9, and we're doing an experiment with, how easy it is to find locally produced food, and create a farm to fork type of meal here in Grey Bruce. So it's part of another more broader term initiative that we're doing for one of our Area 81 members, for one of his ventures. Yeah, but the really interesting thing is, getting these entrepreneurs together, very busy people, very hard to pin down, very difficult to commit to, 8 or 9 hours of their time. These are either active, established entrepreneurs. We've got a couple newbies, and then we have two exit entrepreneurs. And we're going to talk about big ideas. And then so big ideas like, I want, to get these type of people in the room, you kind of want to, suck as much information out of their brains about, where they think entrepreneurship is going, and specifically, where could we create something really significant here in Grey Bruce in terms of industries, in terms of emerging technologies, that sort of thing. But more importantly is, you can't just leave the table, and, with a memory of what was discussed. Really what I want to accomplish out of it is to find 3 to 4 of those 15 that say, yeah, I want to explore this and work on this for the next year. So we're going to look for 3 to 5 or more entrepreneurs that want to contribute, and we'll define what they're going to do, whether it's time, money, access to people, that sort of stuff. We're definitely going to, one of the big ideas will be self-sufficiency. How do we make Grey Bruce self-sufficient economically? And again, these are entrepreneurs. These aren't government people. It's not that we don't want government people there. It's just entrepreneurs drive the economy. Entrepreneurs drive innovation. And entrepreneurs are everywhere. The problem is, I don't know if it's everywhere, but the problem is in rural communities, whether it be physical distance, other commitments, the ones that are really busy, really tough to get them outside of their businesses, because they're busy. So, that's a problem, and that's an area we're trying to solve. It's like, how do we get these entrepreneurs to contribute a slice of their time meaningfully and over a longer term period to do something that's going to, change an industry, maybe introduce a new innovation, that sort of stuff. So that's what we're working on for May. And then Area 81, we'll have our first event of 2025 after that for the broader community. Not sure what that's going to be yet, but yeah. Well, the last thing is finish my level 3 certification through Ash Moria's Lean Stack program. Anybody that is interested in starting scaling a startup, I highly recommend checking Ash Moria's stuff out. He wrote a book called Running Lean. I think the third edition came out about a year or so ago. You probably, if you've heard of Business Canvas Map, he has his own version called the Lean Canvas, which is a modification of that. Plus, he has a methodology called the Continuous Innovation Framework, which ties in business model design and tractioning of your business. Really great guy, but fundamentally, he's hitting the nails on the head. When it comes to, in my view, when it comes to a system, to start scale a business. So I now have my level 3 certification, which is the top certification you can get. As soon as the level 4 comes out, I'll get that. And then this whole methodology is being integrated in Area 81, my rural entrepreneurship accelerator program through MI6. Yeah. Oh, last thing, introduce the one-to-one service, which is a white glove, concierge style, high touch service for entrepreneurs and their ventures, where I work one-on-one with them to help them go to market or help them, scale their business, grow their business. So start, scale, exit. We do that, but it's one-to-one. And that's different than Area 81, which is an accelerator. So it's group-based. It's bigger thinking. It's not just about one venture. It's about lots of ventures. It's about lots of entrepreneurs. It's about scaling, teaching them how to do it. But I apply some of the stuff that I do for the Area 81 members to the individual entrepreneur. It just costs more money. So right now, MI6 is set to offer these two distinct program types. So the one-to-one service, white label service, entrepreneur to entrepreneur, me to that entrepreneur. Area 81 is group-based, a whole bunch of entrepreneurs getting together to help a whole other bunch of entrepreneurs to advance big ideas around innovation, industry disruption, that sort of stuff here in Grey Bruce. Longer-term thinking, don't want to get ahead of my skis, but I think it's important to get this out there a little bit, is I want to plop these things all over rural Ontario, rural Canada, and maybe beyond. So that's a longer term idea, is get it right for Grey Bruce, probably within the next year or so, expand into other rural markets, and go from there. So yeah, so have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.